is a hardcore Jasmine Crockett, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Socialist, Jacobin, angry party. 54% in one poll wouldn't be unhappy if Donald Trump was killed. That's who they are. Netanyahu appreciates Trump because he's not Biden and he's not putting ceasefires and taking the Hamas line and all that stuff. And the Biden administration was full in USAID of pro-Hamas people, and the universities are pro-Hamas. But their trajectories are in the same direction. Denuclearize Iran, emasculate the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah, and get Saudi Gulf money in to redevelop Gaza without Hamas. Okay, but they're not exactly the same. They're parallel. So Netanyahu would want the United States to take care of nuclear, the Iran nuclear mountain, I guess it is. And in fact, Trump is bringing, I don't know what he's got, 6 or 7 B-1 bombers that can carry this 30,000-pound munition, and he's letting everybody see it. They're not in underground bunkers. And then we've got 2 carrier groups that are going to assemble, so he's ratcheting up the pressure. But he would rather, for the economy and the oil markets, and especially his MAGA agenda. You saw that exchange during Signal where J.D. Vance voiced, he said, I don't think this is in the interest of the president's supporters to have a attack on the Houthis. But it wasn't a preemptive, it was a reactive attack. It was like the first term Soleimani or Baghdadi, etc. So Netanyahu would rather see Iran out of the way, and he knows he can't do it unless he has access to the type of aircraft and munitions that only we have. And Trump doesn't want him to get in the way. The problem that Trump is going to have is his offer to Iran is, we're not going to try to overthrow your government. We're not going to try to stir up 40% of your country that are ethnic minorities that hate you. We're not going to unleash Israel on you. And we're not going to take out your nuclear facilities if you stop stirring up Islamic radicalism, trying to overthrow the Gulf sheikdoms, trying to stop commerce in the Red Sea with the Houthis, trying to revive Hezbollah. You were behind Hamas. You just stop that. And they're not going to stop it, because without that they have nothing. They're just a corrupt theocracy that their own people despise. And so I think this will be like the Obama. I mean, he's got a lot more clout and threats, credible. But ultimately, they're not going to negotiate, because they're not going to negotiate themselves into the end, because they're terrorists. And they understand that the only way they're in power, they threaten people with their terror. They've tried to kill Trump. Their agents have. So I would assume that this is going to go on and on and on. And then he's going to be trying to solve certain things first. He would like to get a ceasefire in Ukraine, and he would like to deal finally with a trade tariff in China. And at that point, 3 or 4 or 5 months from now, he's going to have to either cut off and ratchet up the oil embargo, maximum pressure, or he's going to have to take out the nuclear mountain. He has the ability to do both. He is saying that if you look at forget the Supreme Court's little tweak here, they've never been clear about it. But the 64, 65, and subsequent Civil Rights Act say that you cannot use race to discriminate somebody in hiring, retention, or promotion, or admission. That's just the way the law is. And they didn't even get that specific. And then courts try to tweak it. Trump is saying that his legal team says the statutes of the civil rights legislation are in the books. So he looks at these universities and he said, why do they have graduations separated by race? Why do they have dorms separated by race? I know they get around it with theme. They'll say this is an auxiliary. I get email and they'll say, Victor, you said that they have graduations separated by race, but these are auxiliary graduations. Are they not graduation ceremonies? And then they'll say, then these are not dorms, they're theme houses. So you get the picture, but he's basically saying if Stanford University, to take my university, puts on their website the last 3.5 years that they let in 9% of their student body, about 180 people, were white males. And that group is about 33% of the population, right? So do they really believe that white males, in terms of aptitude or test scores or GPA or whatever they are less qualified than other ethnic groups? No. And so he's saying to all these people, you violate the First Amendment when you shout speakers down and you don't allow them to speak. You violate probably the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments. I think I said third about quartering troops. I don't know if they do that or not. I imagine they would if they could. But they've got all the amendments that concern the rights of the accused and evidence. So when Joe Smith is at Stanford and he goes on a date and he and his date get drunk and it's he said, she said, and she files a complaint and said, I was sexually attacked by my boyfriend. And he says, no, you weren't. We got drunk and we had a consensual sexual relationship and I just didn't want to see you afterwards. In other words, he was a rogue and a cad, but not that doesn't matter. They will not say, both of you come before a tribunal and you can have legal counsel. They will be prejudiced against the male, and they won't give him the full array of constitutional protections of cross-examination, naming his accuser, etc. It will not be run by a legal proceeding. So all of those issues, and then these universities are systematically allowing people to be harassing Jewish students. Anti-Semitism. So all of these together, they're saying to them, they're not trying to punish them. They're just saying, we're going to pass on federal funds to you. Sorry, we support this and we support this and we support this, and then you take it. But you know, you don't, I think they've been bragging about their endowments. People have said to them, you have, I think Barack Obama said that. He said, well, you have a $15 billion endowment. Use it. Meaning, just tell the federal government to blank itself, that you can do whatever you want. Be like Hillsdale College. If you really are committed to your principles, as Hillsdale is, then don't take the federal money. Unfortunately for them, there's some other things coming down the tube that they're not going to like. It's not just that they can only charge the government. I shouldn't say charge. They can only rip off the government 15%. They used to do 54, 60% on federal grants, mostly from the NIH. They're going to get a tax on the endowment. I don't know how much. It's going to be geared probably to the number of students versus the endowment. That's going to hurt them. And then there's going to be stuff coming in on the student loan program. And once we get all the stuff cleared out, you'd hear talk that the Senate and the House, if they can survive the midterms or right before the midterms, they're going to go to the university and say, you know what, you're going to have some skin in the game, and we're going to have to redefine moral hazard so that if you want to let all these students come in and you're only graduating them every 6 years and 50% of them drop out anyway, and you have all these studies majors that no one's employable, you're going to have to start telling people what major gives you what job at what price, and give them some more information. But more importantly, you're going to have to pledge a percentage of your endowment to back up their loan. We're not going to do it all anymore because 33% are late, and they're going to be late on your dime, not ours. If they were wise, they would just look at their budget and say, I'm going to get rid of the Center for Therapeutic Counseling. I'm going to get rid of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion czar in the physics department. I'm going to get rid of the Green Change Initiative. I'm going to get rid of the Disinformation and Misinformation Internet Laboratory or Observer, all that stuff. A lot of it can be done by executive order, too. Or to quote Barack Obama, well, I don't care what the Congress does. I got a phone, I got a pen. I got a phone, I got a pen. I'm going to sign an executive order. That's what he did. He set the precedent of the plethora of orders. Until then, people hadn't done it nearly as much. First of all, these people are really stupid. They don't understand the security system in a Tesla. And number two, they all seem to fit a paradigm. Every time I see them, they're the ex-hippies I knew at UC Santa Cruz. This guy was 76-year-old middle-class white guy. And it's almost as if all those people that I was Mr. Country Bumpkin Yokel. I go up from the farm and I see these people. And the first thing I ever saw was everybody was sleeping around. Everybody was using drugs. They had drugs on their door of the Santa Cruz dorms with price tags, psilocybin, LSD, this. And then they were all going out and screaming and yelling and calling their professors and disrupting. And I thought, when my dad dropped me off, they had a big protest, 71. And he said, this is not good. Who are these people? He said, I'm going to be gone, but you're going to have to deal with these people. And I said, I think they're all going to be hippies. You know what he said? Oh, no. I know these people. I know these people. They're going to be the stockbrokers. They're going to be the media people. They're going to be the lawyer. They're going to run the country. This is just a passion, a temporary little play game they do. And then he got in, of course, to World War II. He said, we were flying over Kobe, we were flying over Yokohama, and these people were the people who were telling us what to do and they never set foot out of the United States. So, yeah, when I saw that profile of that guy and I look at all these things, the left, though, gave us a hint. They said on January 6th, we don't care if you went into the Capitol, we don't care anything if you were in the general vicinity. If you touched a barrier, we're going to charge. They charged 950 people. There weren't that many people in the Capitol. There were people that didn't have anything to do with and they put them in jail for 4 or 5 months. And they did it, as the French said, to discourage the others. That was the point.
Yes, but 950, they're wasting the people's time by doing that.
That was the point, but they wanted to be so outrageous and excessive. But my point is, if they really believed, and I think it did work, that everybody was paranoid even for a legitimate, and they do the same thing with anti-abortion protests, why don't they use the left for the Tesla people and just say, you know what, we have warned everybody, do not try to vandalize, firebomb, do any of this. And you keep doing it. And this is federal racketeering across state lines because they all have the same signs. They have the same printout instructions. They all leave at noon for their unionized protest lunch. And just tell them. Pam Bondi said the other day, we're going to go after 20 years for anybody that's caught doing this. And then I hope that they can find that these people are being coordinated by people high up in the Democratic Party. Democratic Party what they're doing is really encouraging violence. You'd think that Cory Booker, when he did his 25-hour Spartacus talk, he would say, I'm very worried. We had the Scalise shooting we had a Bernie Sanders campaign worker tried to knock off Republican legislators. We had this Mr. Crooks guy that was mouthing all this left-wing crap. We had this other idiot that was in Florida. Now we learned that he wanted to get, an anti-aircraft missile. And then we had the Iranians that were sending teams to shoot Trump. And then we've got people issuing threats. We've got Green shaking his cane, trying to disrupt the Congress. We've got the videos where they're punching at people. Just stop this, because this is beyond Trump is a Hitler, he's Mussolini. You're going to you're lowering the bar of what is permissible. And somebody out there is going to say, as I said before, I can take this guy, I can shoot Elon, or I can shoot Trump, and I will be recognized as an iconic hero. And then when you look at these polls where they ask people, would you be upset if Donald Trump? No, 54% of these people. And it's not the same, everybody. Everybody say, well, what I get really angry is somebody says on television, or people I know in academia, or people write me that I've known and liked for years, and they go, Victor, aren't you concerned about the deepening civil I don't know, civil violence maybe, or the rudeness and all, we're just tearing each other apart? Can't we have harmony? Or aren't you worried that yeah, I'm worried, and I know who does 90% of it. I'm not saying that January 6th was a picnic, but compared to the 4 months of 2020 when they rioted and burned and killed and maimed and 2 billion damage and 14,000 people arrested and let go, basically. It's the left doing this. When they had the boycott of Bud Mulvaney, remember that? And they need to be held accountable, or something bad is going to happen.
I've mentioned in other videos that there's been a poverty among the Democratic Party of constructive criticism, alternate agendas to Donald Trump. In other words, without power in the Congress or the White House or the Supreme Court, they've turned to theatrics or performance art, street violence, the Teslas, cutting videos with potty-mouthed senators, profanity, trying to disrupt Congress, keying Teslas, threatening people, this huge 1,400 protests. I shouldn't say they're huge, they were actually quite small. You know, hands off. It was funny. I see these people in their late 60s and early 70s, mostly white people, and they seem to have the same signs, the same agenda, and they leave kind of at the same time. They kind of look like my baby boomer group, and I always think back when I was at UC Santa Cruz in 1971. I see these people. I said, I would think you were the people that I went to school with, and you were doing that when you were 18, 19, and 20, and you haven't changed. You've learned nothing and forgotten nothing. In any case, my point is, why don't they offer a constructive, I don't know, alternative? Nancy Pelosi is seen in all these videos of 30 years ago where she gives a very coherent argument why China is taking us to the cleaners, and they're destroying American jobs, and they're sucking out investment dollars out of the United States. Why doesn't she just say, I kind of agree with Donald Trump. Go back. Or better yet, he stole my ideas. I was there first. Or maybe Trump can say, I want to hire you, Nancy, and can I rent that video? It's impressive. How about Paul Krugman, the New York Times former economist writer, Nobel Prize winner? He wrote, he says, I don't think that mercantilism is that bad at all. He wrote about protectionism all the time. Why doesn't he come out of the woodwork and say, you know what, President Trump, I have about 10 columns about why we need tariffs and mercantilism. Here it is. Copy it. Warren Buffett kind of, got on his hind legs when people suggested that he hadn't come out clearly enough against Donald Trump so-called trade war. But in 2003, in one of his letters, you remember what he wrote? That this was unsustainable. 2003, not with $1 trillion trade deficit. 50 consecutive years we've run deficits. No, he said in 2003 it was a dangerous idea. So why don't people aggregate that left-wing or liberal feeling and then say, Mr. Trump, you stole our ideas about protecting American industry, and now you haven't implemented them well. So we've got some, we're not going to do kickbox videos anymore. We're not going to say murder in the cathedral type. Will somebody not relieve me of this guy? That's what they're doing with Elon Musk when they call him an illegal alien. Except we have constructive agendas. One of them, and then tell us what it is. Maybe it's the debt doesn't matter. We'll have zero interest rates like we've had, and you don't have to pay $3 billion a year in interest because you'll just print money and there's no interest. Or I mean, that's insane. Or maybe they'll look at the trade deficit and say, well, we're very wealthy and trade deficits are good. We offer another alternative. Maybe we'll get more of them, because apparently all these countries with high GDP are wrong. India, China, EU, they're making big mistakes by having surplus. We love deficits, and that's your problem, Mr. Trump. You need bigger deficits. Just give us some concrete counter proposal. Senator Booker talked for 25 hours. Could not he have said 30 seconds? We have a $1.7 trillion annual deficit that is contributing to a $37 trillion national debt, which is reaching 130% of GDP. And I, Senator Cory Booker, potential presidential nominee and candidate in 2028, have this proposal how to end that trade deficit, but especially this budget deficit. And here it is. Just give us 20 minutes of your 25 hours. No, they haven't done any of it. And so when they wonder why the Harvard-Harris poll or other polls don't show Trump dropping, besides the fact that his constituency, it parallels the 50% who only own 1% of the market capitalization of Wall Street, they look for alternatives and they see nothing but street theater. Maybe they think that's going to win them the midterms. Traditionally, historically, they may be right. But for now, there's just Donald Trump's proposal and everybody who's blasting them, and no constructive alternative.
Well, I mean, we're in a high stakes poker game, and Donald Trump has identified 70 nations that feel that it's essential to get into the U.S. market, and then they know that they've been running surpluses, or they have asymmetrical tariffs, or they have what I'd call stealthy tariffs, artificial health or security concerns that are really tariffs or taxes, etc. So nobody wants to be left out when the music, it's musical chairs. So Trump's strategy is that he's going to get one or two big countries, and I think it will not be China. It'll be a foil against China, maybe Japan, maybe Europe, and then they'll come and other people will think, I've got to come or I'm going to be shut out of the market. My only worry about it is that all the American people follow him on the word reciprocity and zero tariff. So if Australia is running a surplus, even though they kind of tweak our beef and are not quite fair, it's not going to sell to the public to put an automatic tariff on them. But when he sticks to reciprocal or zero tariffs in the first round, he wins the public opinion. And then he can come back and say, well, there were insidious tariffs, and I got the trade surplus down from $1 trillion to $200 billion. But, you know, Europe has the VAT tax. And so he can discuss all those complexities. But if he says that he's going to put a tariff on a country that wants zero tariffs, or is running a deficit with us, that doesn't sell as well. And I think they know it. And there's kind of some tension in there. But I would just say something very quickly. We've had 50 consecutive years of trade deficits, and now we're running $1 trillion. Our free trade partners in North America, Mexico's running $171 billion trade deficit. It gets $63 billion in remittances that go back from people here, mostly illegally. It's getting another $20 billion from the cartel. Canada, who's our best friend, is only paying 1.37 on their defense GDP ratio, and they're running $63 billion. And yet Trump understands he's got to get along with them. So what I'm getting at is all these countries know what they're doing, and all the economists, the Wall Street Journal economists, are saying, well, trade deficits don't matter and everything. But when you talk to these people and you say, well, all the economists in the United States say trade deficits are either good or irrelevant, why don't you run one then? And we'll be the surplus, the stupid people, and you be the smart people and run trade deficit. Nobody thinks that's compelling. So we got all the economists up here saying trade deficits are irrelevant, or they're going to hurt us. But we have all the other countries' economists say, well, we don't want to do what you do. And then the second thing is we've got 10% of the people in the country that own 93% of the market capitalization of the country, and 50% have 1%. And they're looking at other indicators. They're looking at 93,000 jobs that we didn't expect, over estimates in March. They're looking at the March inflation rate, which was annualized at 2.6. They're looking at lower oil prices. And they're not in the same panic as they understand that stocks are absolutely important for the health of the country, but they're not as hysterical or frenzied as this 10% that have lost their minds. I think he's got about a week or 2 weeks to get as I said earlier, a big party to agree. Once one big party says, you know what, let's go to zero tariffs, or we're going to reduce our trade surplus by 50%, something like that, at Japan or South Korea, then I think you're going to see movement. And then the hysteria will start acting in reverse. People will say, oh my God, look at these stocks. this is a great time to buy given all the other indicators. And then they look at Trump's first year, term. They said, this guy is the guy that dismantled Dodd-Frank. This is the guy we went up 65%. So he's more favorable to the stock market than the alternative. But he's got it. I think what he's trying to do, Piers, he's trying to get it all, everything, excise tax. And I tend to think maybe the Elon Musk or some of the senators, not if they are, I think, advising him first round, get it down to zero or parity. It's a great thing. We might get not everything, but we can work on that. And I think I think it's going to work. But he's when he gets the big enchilada, a big offer, I think he should, and it's zero or parity. Yeah. That will sell well politically and on as well. He's closed the border. There's not going to be 10,000 illegal aliens coming in again. Our fertility rate is not as bad as Europe. It's gone down to 1.65. So we're a static, if not declining population. All these economists have these ratios for every $1 billion or so many million jobs, 10 billion, a million jobs. But I don't believe we've got $7 or $8 trillion in commitment, but maybe 2 or 3 already. And that would represent 10 or 15 million new jobs. So I think the idea is that if you train the workforce and you rely heavily on automation, even with the present diminished workforce, and the unemployment rate's only 4%, 4.5, you can be as effective and high tech. I don't think he's calling for a bunch just to all line up and put things on an assembly, just make widgets, and that's going to pay him $30 an hour. I think he's thinking, we've got the best technology. I've got Silicon Valley. I've even got people like Bezos and Zuckerberg, David Sachs. These are like the war production board of World War II, Henry Kaiser, Henry Ford. They're really, I don't agree with them politically, but they're patriotic and they want to make America. And I think that's kind of a unique idea for somebody to enlist all these technocrats.
If you enjoyed today's video on inner vision, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below.